So Joe Joyce stopped Kash in the 10th round over the weekend, and the general consensus seems to be that he looked even slower, even more hittable, and even stiffer than usual, but without the usually high work rate to compensate for it. Now obviously Joe Joyce has other attributes, he's physically strong, he takes a pretty good shot, etc., but the high work rate was one of his calling cards. And without the high work rate to compensate for his deficiencies, where's he really going in the heavyweight division at the age of 38? That's the general consensus from what I've seen in comments and other people's videos, etc. Now, Kash, I think it's fair to say, would be classed by most boxing fans as an area level fighter. Therefore, there was the expectation beforehand that Joe Joyce would stop him in a couple rounds. The fact that he didn't is at least partly the reason why Joyce's performance is getting all this criticism and why people are so concerned about his future. And they may be right to be concerned. But as we've seen with other heavyweights over the past 12 months or so, activity is very important. Getting back on the horse, getting active, getting some momentum back, because that allows you not only to build sharpness and fitness, etc., but also confidence. Joe Joyce is coming off two back-to-back defeats against Zheli Zhang, where he got stopped both times. So there may well be demons there for Joe Joyce to overcome. Now, I'm not so hopeful for Joe Joyce's prospects moving forward as, let's say, for Anthony Joshua's prospects moving forward, because one, Anthony Joshua is younger. Two, Anthony Joshua is more talented than Joe Joyce. He doesn't get hit with as many shots as Joyce gets hit with. I mean, here against Kash, it was the usual thing. Big overhand rights from Kash, couldn't miss Joe Joyce's head time and time again. Many people have pointed out the fact that Joyce at 286 pounds was a career heaviest in this fight. And that, of course, doesn't help when getting out of the way of shots. But based upon this performance, he probably needs a few more of these confidence builders. Not that he has the time. If an opportunity came up for him to fight on a big card in Saudi against a high-profile opponent, if he decided to turn it down, such an opportunity might never come again until he's well into his 40s. So he does not have time on his side at all. So what Joe Joyce needs is to have some luck on his side, to hope that he can have these confidence-building fights and still get an opportunity at the end of it. And his promoter, Frank Warren, is going to be very important in this process because it's about getting Joe Joyce out as regularly as possible in a relatively short space of time. I mean, seriously, Joe Joyce could fight again next month. That Kash fight, unless he's got any hand injuries or anything like that, was not particularly punishing. He needs to be getting out again in no later than 2 months. If he can have 2 or 3 more fights by the back end of summer this year, then maybe there'll be an opportunity to fight someone significant in the final quarter of 2024. That's if he decides to do what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying he should, because again, he doesn't have time on his side at his age. But if he wants to do that, that's the kind of schedule they're going to have to put him on. Out almost once every 6 weeks from here on in, and then a big one in the final quarter of the year. And with Joe Joyce, it's a matter of either cashing out, taking the biggest fight for the biggest money available, and whatever happens, happens, or selecting the right style for him to fight. You see, when a guy's got a really good chin, people think, okay, this means it's okay to put him in against big punchers. But actually, big punchers may well be Joe Joyce's kryptonite because he's so easy to hit. Big punchers can hurt Joe Joyce. Whereas with guys who are not such big punchers, they're hitting Joyce, but he's able to take their shots, stay on top of them, wear them down over the course of a fight, and stop them late. You know, we've often compared Joe Joyce to George Foreman in terms of his biomechanics. He's obviously not as good as George Foreman, but there's another major difference, and that is the fact that Foreman had more problems with slick, tricky fighters than he did with big punchers. Whenever Foreman had a showdown with a big puncher, he usually did well. I mean, some of the fights were wild, but he usually came out on top. But when he was in there with a guy that had some mobility and slickness and guile about them, that's when he tended to come unstuck. Whereas with Joe Joyce, it's kind of the opposite. I'm not saying he's going to defeat every fighter that's slick and not a particularly big puncher, not at all. But I think he's probably more effective against those kind of guys because he can impose his size upon them and the punches coming back are not really affecting him. They're not stopping him from doing what he's trying to do. Whereas against the big punches, I mean, it's disastrous for Joe Joyce. And it's the same going all the way back to the amateur days when he fought Sergey Kuzmin and got flattened in a round. I think it was like under a minute. That fight is still on YouTube, I believe. Joe Joyce versus Sergey Kuzmin. That fight took place when Joyce was in his late 20s. It's not like he was some teenager who hadn't yet got his man strength. He was about 27 when he got flattened by Sergey Kuzmin. So Joyce really needs to figure out what he's really in the game for. He doesn't have all the time that Joseph Parker apparently still has, because Parker's in his early 30s, Joyce is in his late 30s. What is most important to Joe Joyce? Is it a big payday, or is it the chance to fight for the heavyweight title? If it's the chance to fight for the heavyweight title, he's going to need to maneuver himself carefully and pick the right styles for him. Obviously avoiding the likes of Zheli Zhang along the way, unless we see more deterioration from Zhang. And back to the Kash Ali fight. Again, Kash Ali, in the eyes of most people, an area level fighter, but never been stopped before. And sometimes even guys who are not at a particularly high level, I spoke about this in another video recently, sometimes guys who are not at a particularly high level can take a really, really good shot. Is Kash Ali one of them? Is he just tougher than most fighters at this level normally are in terms of his mental fortitude? And, he had some awkward defensive moves in there. I suppose things will become clearer regarding where Joe Joyce is at over his next few fights. So let me know what you guys thought about his performance against Kash Ali over the weekend in the comment section below, and what you think of his prospects moving forward. And for those who have been asking for post-fight videos for the undercard of Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou, the problem with uploading such videos several days after the event is that loads and loads of people start complaining, oh, you're late on this and you're late on that and you're late on the other. And with regards to fighters like Nick Bull and, some of the other undercard bouts, they're not going to get me a load of views. So it's not worth me putting those videos up on YouTube at this late stage. Instead, I've put them on my Patreon page as audio only. One long file, which is over an hour long and includes a bunch of other boxing news, which I haven't covered on YouTube for you guys to listen to. So if you're interested in my extra boxing content, head over to my Patreon page and select the boxing tier. You can download the Patreon app from the Play Store or the App Store. There's no contract, there's no commitment. Works just like Netflix or whatever, except it's much, much cheaper than that. And I'll see you over there. We've got a group chat on Patreon, so you can come chop it up with us over there. If not, then I'll catch you on the next YouTube video.